We know that people plus process equals success, and it equals support. And so we are going to be sharing with you today what it means to do people before process and how that equals support. We also know that the research shows us that when people are valued and feel valued at work, that their outcomes are better, that they're more efficient and more effective. And so, of course, we want to create spaces for our students to be valued. So we're so excited to be talking to you about this today. I'm going to give us just a little more of a background about this appreciative approach to higher ed. And then we'll pass it off to Camille in just a couple of minutes. So once again, I'm Michael Bjorkia, Director of University and Exploratory Advising from Utah State. I'm here with Julia Vincent, Associate Director of the Academic Advising Center at the University of Utah, and Camille Gooch, the Associate Director for Student Success. Associate Director for the Student Success Center at Weber State University. So our guiding questions today, here's our session overview. We have guiding questions, and then we'll head into our overview. We'll do some disarm strategies and discover strategies and next steps. Guiding questions today, how are you intentionally contributing to environments that focus on the strengths and potential of your students and colleagues? And how has this mindset contributed to improving efficiency, effectiveness, and sense of belonging? So Camille's going to kick us off by giving us an overview of the framework.
Great, thank you, Michael. So to start with, I just wanted to talk a little bit about the origin of appreciative advising, so you can know a little bit more about the foundation. And the roots come from the field of positive psychology, which is the study of optimal human functioning and the strengths and virtues that enable individuals and communities to thrive. So positive psychology really encourages us to use the strengths-based approach and start with what's working rather than a deficit-based approach where we're always starting with what's going wrong. From positive psychology came the philosophy of appreciative inquiry, which was pioneered by an individual named David Cooper-Ryder. And I like this quote about it. It's about the search for what is life-giving and possible within people and the world around us. And appreciative inquiry suggests that what we appreciate appreciates, meaning that it grows and increases. So it encourages us to ask questions such as, what do I want more of? What do I want to start, to create, to support, and to reinforce? And to facilitate appreciative inquiry, a 4D model was developed. And those 4Ds are discover, dream, design, and destiny. So this might sound familiar if you're familiar with appreciative advising. Jenny Bloom and some of her colleagues recognized the value in these 4Ds and the overlap between them and academic advising, and developed the framework of appreciative advising, which is the intentional collaborative practice of asking positive open-ended questions that help students optimize their educational experiences and achieve their dreams, goals, and potentials. And these open-ended questions are really key to helping us as advisors elicit stories and narratives from students to really help them understand and process their experiences and really think about what is possible and what they can achieve. So just a quick review of the 6 phases in case you're not familiar with them. I'm sure many of you are, so we'll just go over them quickly. And just to reiterate, we're going to mostly focus on disarm and discover today. But all 6, first it starts with disarm, which is really about that opportunity to make a good first impression and build rapport, create trust, and create a welcoming and safe environment for the student. Then we have discover, where those questions, open-ended questions, start helping us understand the strengths and skills and abilities of our students. Then we have dream, where we're looking to find out what their dreams are. Pretty self-explanatory there. And just learn about their different hopes for their futures. Then we have design, which is where we are helping co-create a strategy for the student to help make their dreams a reality. Deliver, where the student goes out and takes the steps necessary to put that plan into action. And as advisors, we're here to support them and encourage them through that path. And then don't settle, which just challenges students to, raise the bar and achieve their full potential. And I like this one too because in what I've read, it also talks about advisors not settling. We as advisors and students should all set our expectations high of each other. So when we're thinking about the framework or the phases, I like to think of it as a framework and not something that you have to do necessarily sequential. And I know this, is well known as well. It's not just my thought, I should say, but it's just a framework. And what I really liked about it is that I found that I was already doing a lot of these things in my regular practice, so it wasn't something that I had to totally change when I became more familiar with appreciative advising and the different phases. But what it did do is it helped me be a little bit more intentional when I am working with the student to, pick out the phases that I think are going to be most beneficial for a particular meeting that I'm having with the student. So I really like that. And I also like the idea of the appreciative mindset, which is not something that, most people know the phases, but you might not have heard about the appreciative mindset. And again, as advisors, I think most of us already feel this way or believe these different things that we are working with students to, to believe in their potential and to really help them achieve their goals. And I just love these different things. So I'm just going to read them off quickly, but caring and believing in the potential of each student, appreciating the good fortune to positively impact other people's lives and the future of society, acknowledging that you can always become better at your craft. So I say kudos to all of us for being here today and for those who are going to watch this later, that we are improving ourselves and working on our craft by doing these professional development opportunities, and thanks to UAA for help providing them. Also remembering the amount of power that students perceive advisors to possess and reflecting on how to best utilize that power, being truly interested in students and enjoying learning from them, being culturally aware and responsive in interactions with students. So I really like that mindset along with the phases. And along with the, the things I talked about with the phases and with this mindset, you can always replace students with colleagues, and so that we can realize the potential of each of our colleagues. We can find the different strengths and abilities that our colleagues have as well. And I know that we're going to touch on that a little bit in our presentation today. So I'm actually we're going to do a deep dive into Disarm now. And I'm going to turn the time over to Julia.
Excellent. Thanks, Camille. So we're going to talk a little bit more about Disarm. And with Disarm, what we're really concerned with is building trust and rapport. And I think that this is important to think about: what does our physical space look like for students, and what do those first interactions look like with students, but also the staff members that we work with. So there's a whole bunch of different kind of techniques or different ideas that you can use with Disarm. But a couple that I'd like to talk about. The first is just mentioning the book Radical Candor. And this is a book that's been circulating for some time, and it's authored by Kim Scott. And so this was a book that we chose in my office to read for our supervisory group. So that's people who are supervising other professional staff members. And we chose to read it all as a group and discuss it. And to be honest, some of the things are totally private sector. And I was thinking, no way, this is never going to work in higher education, or they just don't quite get it. This just doesn't work for us. But a lot of the same ideas actually did translate over really well to thinking about education and advising. So Kim Scott really subscribes to a lot of the same, some of the same ideas about clear is kind that Brene Brown shares also in her writing. And so to be clear is to be kind to others and giving immediate feedback. So one of the things that can dissolve trust quicker than anything else is waiting to provide feedback. So if someone is doing something that you're thinking, like I really wouldn't do it that way, or that approach is not really necessarily effective, or I wish they would have done this a different way, Nothing can dissolve trust faster than waiting for a monthly or even an annual. An annual would be the worst case scenario, waiting for an annual review of that person to give that feedback. So talking openly and clearly early and giving quick feedback. So saying, hey, that meeting went really well. I think that the language that you used maybe wasn't communicating what you were hoping to communicate about that. And some of the principles behind radical candor are caring personally about others, which I think is shown so easily in appreciative advising, but then also challenging directly. And the intersection of those two things is the kind of principles behind being radically candid. So challenging immediately and not waiting, and showing that it's okay to disagree or have different opinions than those who you may be working with, but still being able to say, I care about you personally enough, I care about you professionally as well, that I want to have a dialogue between the two of us. So that's something that we have read as a group. And like I said, not everything quite works in higher education, but I do think it gives us kind of a good foundation and ideas to think about. And one of the other ideas that I think really helps build rapport within teams is thinking about appreciation languages. So we just started to dip our toes at the University of Utah into this idea of appreciation languages. But what really struck me is that providing not necessarily feedback, right? Showing appreciation, saying, congratulations, this team nailed it. Like, good job on that program. Or, did you see how many drop-in appointments Shelly was able to take on that first day of the semester, or whatever it is. Really, really fantastic things. Realizing that not everyone wants to be appreciated by saying woohoo in the middle of a staff meeting. That could make them just be starting to sink down into their chair thinking, no, please don't do that, right? That's embarrassing for me, or that's just not how I necessarily like to be appreciated. And so that was something else that really stuck with me, and thinking, how do we provide feedback, but also how do we celebrate those around us in a way that feels meaningful and personal to them? So that was kind of our start, just our dipping our toes into it. And I think that that's something we'd like to continue to grow, especially as we get back to campus, but just easy things. And I think what's important also is that those small things, the easy things, that is truly what builds rapport. It doesn't have to be massive gestures, but every day, the way that we interact with our staff, the way we interact with our colleagues, the way we interact with our students, that shows that trust can be built in there and starts to disarm and allow for meaningful relationships to happen. So Camille, could you tell us a little bit more about what Weber has done around appreciation languages?
Yeah, thanks, Julia. We're on the same wavelength as you a little bit, because last year, one of our teams that I participate on, we read the book, The Appreciation Languages, and it was just really fun to kind of hear what everybody's appreciation language was and kind of guess what it was as you're reading the book. But one of the quotes that I pulled out that I wanted to share today was it's from Tony Quartz, President and CEO of the Energy Project, and he said, "Whatever else each of us derives from our work, there may be nothing more precious than the feeling that we truly matter, that we contribute unique value to the whole, and that we're recognized for it." So I think that just kind of goes along with what Julia was saying and what Michael said at the beginning, that appreciation does make a big difference. And in this book, it says it's one of the most significant things that can move the needle on satisfaction in a job, and it can significantly increase levels of engagement. And it's just really powerful because appreciation doesn't always have to come top down. That's one of the things talked about in the book. It's really good to get it from your colleagues as well. We can get it lateral, we can get it from the bottom up. So it's a really powerful tool that you can use. And one thing that I learned about my colleagues is that many of them value quality time, which is not my top one. So I started trying to incorporate a little bit more opportunities to have that quality time. And something for me that was not something that really occurred to me was just to even say hello to people in the morning. I'm not really a morning talker. I don't know if there are any in the crowd like that, but I don't know, I just am usually quiet, just get to my office and get started. But I've had colleagues who go around and say hello to everybody, and the one that inspired me was a quality time person, or a person who had an appreciation of quality time. So I thought, I want to try that and see how it impacts my day. And I think even just that small gesture of walking around, or just as I'm walking in, greeting everyone and asking how they're doing, lets people know that I care about them, that I value them here in our office. But also knowing just generally, as Julia said, if someone wants to be recognized publicly, or if they'd rather just receive an email, those things are good things to know about your colleagues. So I'm going to turn it over now to Michael to talk a little bit about planning and disarm.
Thanks, Camille, and thanks, Julia, for what you've shared to this point. So when we think about disarm, a lot of times we're thinking about disarm, and we talk about it in disarming students. How do we create these spaces where students feel welcome? And a flipped idea of this on disarm is building trust through having your calendar planned out really well. So when we think about appreciative advising, and when we think about utilizing this approach in administration, we think about the relationship between the disarm, building trust and rapport, and the deliver phases. And building trust happens when you follow through on your commitments, when you say that you're going to do something and you actually follow through and make it happen, when you communicate about your plans, if something comes up that you're not able to deliver on a commitment that you've made. So I disappeared, but I think I'm back.
You're back.
Okay. So I put this in the chat, link to a box folder, and within that box folder, you'll see an Excel file, and this is all about planning your week. So planning your week is something that I do every single Monday. And many of us have high caseloads, and we're thinking about how can we possibly plan our week how can I take an hour of my week to plan when I don't have an hour to give? And I thought that same thing, but I went through this process of not delivering, and so my lack of disarm, I was losing trust because people were counting on me to do things, and I would say, that phrase, overpromise and underdeliver. Well, I was doing the opposite of that. I was doing overpromise and underdeliver because I was just running out of time, and I was thinking about my own self-care, and I was just I was letting my calendar be the boss of me instead of me being the boss of my calendar. And so I would encourage all of us to take a look at 4 weeks of our calendar. How much time was spent in appointments with students or meetings with colleagues or professional development, working on projects, answering your email? What do you learn after you evaluate your calendar? Are you overworking, and that's contributing to burnout? And so how can you possibly, like Camille said, how can you possibly show up greeting your colleagues or being having space to help students with the things that they're going through when you're burned out? It's nearly impossible. Are you when you're changing tasks, it can take 20 minutes to get back to the thing that you were wanting to do in the first place. And so intentionally designing your calendar, you can get maximum effectiveness and really build trust with your students and your stakeholders. So if you don't need to look at this now, but I just wanted to invite you to save this link. It has some things from our session, but also that Excel file where you can just go in and put the calculations in and think through how you can utilize this tool for creating a week that makes the most sense. So in addition to this, I have also created strategic space for email, and also strategic space for email on Monday morning. And I have to have, one thing that I've learned about myself is I really do need some time away from work. And before I started taking responsibility for my own calendar and designing it in a way that would make me the most effective, I was working on weekends because I didn't want to come to work on Monday with an inbox full of emails or with projects that I hadn't delivered on. And so now with my Monday planning, I can really be more strategic about what my week looks and feels like. And now I'm more effective, and I'm actually delivering on the things that I say that I'm going to do. And so I want to share with you, this is also in the notes, and so you don't need to write any of this down. This is in the box folder. But these are the questions that I ask myself every single Monday to keep myself accountable for following through on my commitments. First thing, building trust, rapport, and collaboration with my stakeholders. Which stakeholders do I need to engage this week? For me, these are my direct reports, everyone on my team, the students and peer advisors that are working with us, my colleagues in a unit we call the Student Achievement Collaborative, my colleagues in statewide campuses, and the advisors in the colleges and their administrators. So I think through each, this is my people first. I think through the people that I serve and the people that I work with, and I think through how can I build trust, rapport, and collaboration with these people. My next question I ask myself is, have I responded to all emails? And if not, I identify the ones that I need to respond to, and I identify a time on Monday or somewhere else in my held spaces where I'm going to respond to those emails. Next, leading meetings that create or sustain generative energy and identifying strategic opportunities and advantages and elevating moments of pride. So the questions I ask myself here, are all meetings on the calendar necessary this week? Can any meetings be canceled or even replaced with an email? Are all Zoom links on my calendar? I'm the queen of not doing this, which is why I had to put this as a question I ask myself each Monday. I schedule meetings and then it's 2:58 and the meeting starts at 3 and people are wondering where's the link? Are all Zoom links on my calendar? Have I requested agenda items for the meetings I am leading? Have I sent agenda items for all of my meetings? So again, I'm coming back to people before process. I'm not just holding meetings because that's what we do. I'm creating spaces where people know what to expect when they come to the meeting, that they have their own ideas about what they have the agenda so they can come with their ideas already thought out. They're not surprised by the topics that come up. This is one way that I'm thinking about building trust and putting people before process in this disarm phase. Next, am I upholding my commitments and engaging my creativity? What projects need my attention this week? When during the week will I work on and complete each task? And I have a specific space on my calendar for that. And then finally, knowing that I have these spots held on my calendar for certain projects, it allows me to, rather than be reactive, I can be proactive and I can actually pivot and be more flexible when a meeting comes up. It doesn't elevate me or get me worried or wonder where I'm going to fit in my projects because I've already created that space on my calendar. So this is not something that I was doing before. I was working 50, 60-hour weeks consistently. People on my team were getting emails from me at 11 o'clock at night. And then what did that look and feel like for them? Well, they thought that they needed to respond to me and I was setting really bad work expectations. And so thinking about this disarm phase and taking control of your own calendar is something that we all need to be responsible for doing. So thank you for that. To all of you, for Julia and Camille for that phase. And we're going to head back over into Discover with Julia talking about motivated skills.
Absolutely. So thinking about how we can incorporate Discover in everyday conversations. And I think about this with my students. I work primarily with major exploration students, which are so much fun because we're constantly doing that Discover phase, right? Figuring out what can we learn about ourselves and what can we learn about what's available. And so I think about that with my students and my staff. And one thing that stuck out to me, and this was years ago, I went to a conference session held by Dick Nodell, and he has done a lot of different card sorts. And so I love activities or assessments and things like that that I can bring into my advising appointments. And this motivated skills card sort in particular was just fantastic. And the reason that I think it is helpful is because it is relevant at all points in your kind of life cycle, your career cycle, your college cycle. It can be new, it can be experienced people, and you can continue to look at this. And so what happens with motivated skills, and this isn't something where you necessarily need to buy the card sort, I think just even thinking about these concepts and these questions is really insightful, is you think about skills that you do in a job. So as advisors, that may be searching through data, right? Maybe we're deep diving into data and GPAs and credit hours and things like that and seeing what are these challenges for our students, or where are these kind of pain points, or where are students really succeeding? It could be doing research about what other universities are doing right now. It could be copywriting. We have lots of things that we're publishing constantly, and there's nothing worse than publishing and realizing, oh, there was that misspelling, or we, linked the wrong thing. So that may be something. It could be designing a handout for students. It could be presenting to folks at an orientation session, or maybe inside of the classroom. So you think about the skills that you're doing, and you can review these with folks that you are supervising. It could be in a monthly meeting with them, or maybe you want to integrate this into an advising appointment. So then after you look at the skills and kind of understand what they are, you look at how good you are at that thing, right? So what is your proficiency? Is it something that you don't really know anything about? Is it something that you feel comfortable with that? Or are you going over to like, I'm really awesome at this thing, right? So thinking about where are you in that skill level, and then thinking about where you might want to be in that skill level. Sometimes you have no skill in a particular activity, but you really want to continue to develop that, and that sounds energizing and exciting. So once you understand the proficiency, we then help students or staff organize these cards by enjoyment level. So the idea here is you can be really, really great at something and hate it. I hate doing it, right? So something that I think that I am fairly decent at is sorting through data and doing Excel files. I'm pretty good at it. I don't like doing it, right? And that's not to say that I don't do it in my job. I still totally do it. But understanding that and being able to communicate that is super important. So knowing my supervisor knows that that's kind of an exhausting thing for me, right? That's not necessarily filling my bucket. That's not what I want to fill my week with. But meeting with students one-on-one and discussing major exploration, I could do that for hours and hours on end. And that is a really, really motivated skill for me. I'm highly motivated. I think I'm proficient at it. And so thinking about that. Another example would be copywriting. We have a person on our staff, and she is an amazing copywriter. I can send anything to her, and she is fantastic at grammar and punctuation, just all of these things, and I'm so grateful for that skill. And when I talked to her, I said, I always send you these things. Do you enjoy doing this? Or are you just good at it, right? And so we've just decided, okay, copy stuff goes to her. And she said, no, I love it. And I was thinking, awesome, that is excellent. You really enjoy doing that and you're great at it. And then also thinking, how can we maybe have her pair up with someone who has identified copy editing as something that they're not really good at, but they're interested in? And how can we build those bridges for mentorship and partnership? And how can we leverage these skills within our teams? And it's something that we have to continually reevaluate, right? So I supervise people who are 2 years into their career, and some folks who are maybe just a couple of years out of retirement. And so thinking about, okay, what is that person in retirement? What has changed over the last 10 years, right? Just because that's what they like to do and what they were really good at 10 years ago, maybe they're still interested in developing some new skills and thinking about that. And so it really goes to that idea of appreciative advising and appreciative mindset, that it is a cycle, right? We keep on coming back to discover, which is one of the reasons that I think I've really enjoyed motivated skills. Like I said, it's a card sort, but there's lots of activities that you can find online, or even just starting to have those honest conversations with folks that we talked about in Disarm, about continuing to learn about the people who are around you and how you can balance those talents and maybe weaknesses throughout the office. So then, Camille, can you tell us a little bit more about some building experts in our new advisors?
Yeah, thanks, Julia. And I just really loved your story about motivated skills too, because I think it relates, because especially with new advisors, sometimes they don't know what they like yet, and sometimes you can get into a part where, oh, it's expected that I'm going to do this, and I don't like it. And even sometimes as seasoned advisors, as I like to say, we get in that. I've had that experience where an assignment comes up and it just fills me with dread. but my supervisor's been open to, you can say no, and I've appreciated that all the time. So if you're in that situation where you can be honest with your supervisor and let them know what you actually do like, that's just going to be able to lend to your strengths, because as appreciative advising, as we've been talking, is really an approach to build on your strengths. And so one of the prompts for this, in our Discover, is just always to discover the strengths and skills of our students. As Julia mentioned, that energizes her, and she works with students a lot. I work with new advisors in at our college, and I love that. I love meeting with new advisors, hearing from their background, getting their excitement, and helping them kind of dip their feet into the advising world and introduce them to resources on our campus and UAA and NACADA and things like that can help them improve their craft, as we talked about earlier. And when I was thinking about this and how I can recognize my colleagues' strengths, skills, and abilities, one of the things that I thought of is I can be better as a seasoned advisor at asking for their help. A lot of times I have those new advisors coming to my door, or even, any advisor, asking for a question or a clarification on a policy, just because I've been here. I'm an old timer here at Weber State, so I get some of those questions, and I love it. I actually like being an expert. That's something that makes me feel validated, I guess, in my job. But I come to recognize that I need to let other people be the experts sometimes. So when I have a question, I love to go to our new advisors or any of my colleagues now. Not too many of them are very new anymore, but and ask them, have you heard about this? Because they do more advising than I do now on a day-to-day basis. So sometimes I don't know if things have changed or not. But if I know that they're great at graphic design, like my colleague Richard, I can ask him for a little favor, and I know that he will appreciate that opportunity to show his skills and abilities, or ask my colleagues for other things that I know that they're interested in. And my intent in doing this is just to convey that I really do value their contributions, their strengths, and want them to grow and feel that they are, wanted and needed here, and that they have a lot to contribute to our office. And I also just like to validate them and help them grow when I can. So that's my suggestion, is don't be the expert all the time. Let others grow into their position as well. So next I'm going to turn the time over to Michael about asking questions.
So what you've heard from Camille and Julia, thinking about how we can use this Discover phase in everyday life, I want to share just 2 strategies from my team, 3 strategies that have been utilized and elevate some of the work that's been happening. But I want to preface this with those of you here that are leaders or directors or direct supervisors of either students or staff. We know that it's our responsibility to manage the energy of our team. That's what great leaders do. They're aware of the different skills and abilities and interests that people have, and we're thinking about accountability too. We want people to be working in spaces where they can deliver on their outcomes, on their key performance indicators. And so how can we create the spaces that our employees can thrive? And thinking through the spaces we're trying to create for students, it's a similar process, and the questions are very similar. And so thinking, utilizing this Discover phase in working with our staff is a really great strategy for creating spaces where the people that are working on our teams can be really successful. So we take a lot of this on as leaders ourselves, but there's so much space for all of us to contribute to what this looks and feels like. And so my team created a people operations committee, and they are responsible for keeping the team connected. And it's been for all of us, it's been a challenge through this pandemic. But one great idea that was so meaningful, the week leading up to Valentine's Day, they created a Qualtrics, and they put everyone's name on the Qualtrics, and they had open boxes underneath, and they just said, what do you value, or what skills have you seen about in this person? And then they collected all of the Qualtrics data, and on Valentine's, they sent us each out all of the responses from everyone else on the team. And that was so motivating and inspiring, and it helped me see more in myself, what people were recognizing in me, and it helped me understand what I need to be doing more of, where people are connecting most with me. I thought that was such a great strategy. And that was Annette Peterson and Maisie Doherty. They're amazing. So if you know them and have questions about what they're doing on people operations, those are the people to contact. Next, Rebecca Barrett is an advisor for our integrated studies program at our statewide campuses. And she's leading meetings. And I think that's another great way as leaders. What would it look and feel like to change leadership for our meetings, to rotate that by semester? So Rebecca's leading our weekly meeting for the integrated studies team, and she starts every meeting with a great question. And one question that she asked was, if you had one worry that you could just put in a hot air balloon and let it drift away, what would that be? And so this great question that she has brought into the administrative space of the work that we do through our meetings gave me another great question that I can ask students. So you can see why creating these cultures of people before process really do create spaces where we're all growing in our capacity to care in a more deep and meaningful way for our students. In the handout, in the box file, we have some other great questions that we've been asking and some other great strategies there. So I want to draw your attention back to that box file. Feel free to open that up or save those files and download them so you can utilize them and incorporate some of those great questions into your daily work. So I can't believe that it's already time for us to start wrapping up. This time went by so fast. I'm going to we're going to head over to Julia for action steps.
Absolutely. Thanks, Michael. So something that I think is just so important when we're taking all this information from conferences is thinking about a really small thing that you can do immediately in the next week, right? And so sometimes I go to these conferences and I think, wow, that's super impressive that, you know, they're doing this awesome program, or they're being able to do this with their students, or that class that they designed. And sometimes those feel like really big mountains that we need to climb. And especially when we're busy, right? A lot of us are, you know, right at the graduation point. We are getting ready for new student orientation. That is not always an option to climb a mountain at that moment, right? So what are some small steps or something that you can use immediately next week? I'd love to see some ideas if anyone wants to put them in the Q&A. You're welcome to throw them in that chat. And here's just a couple that we came up with of thinking something small that you could potentially do. So things like adjusting your Zoom background to be more inviting or representative of you and what you care about. Reading an article like the 5 appreciation languages in the workplace with your team, and that's in our references and also in our handout. Integrating some kind of new open-ended question for your advising appointment. I love that Michael just gave us an example of one of those from a team meeting of hers. Or even nominating a colleague for an award and sharing your nomination statement with them. So many times when we nominate folks for things, they may have been notified that they're nominated, or they almost sometimes don't even know unless they win the award. But what a great way to build trust by lifting up those who are around you, by sharing a nomination statement of how excellent you think that somebody is. So just thinking about what is something that you can immediately do, what's a small takeaway that you can immediately integrate to kind of elevate your practice, whether that's working with students or working with staff, really either way.
I'm going to open us up for any Q&A. So if there was anything that came up for you all, feel free to head into the chat to make an announcement. Mine says make an announcement, but yours may say ask a question. And in the meantime, as we're waiting for this to come up, Julia, while you're still on, I'm just wondering from you, you and Camille spent time together. We didn't plan this part, by the way, so Julia, if you don't want to answer that, feel free not to. We spent a lot of time together getting our presentation ready. I'm wondering from you if there was a great idea maybe that we shared or that we didn't share from this presentation that you have taken action on, or just even taken action on thinking about.
Yeah, I think that It's so hard right now, and I think that everyone's experiencing these challenges with COVID, like pre-COVID, post-COVID, right? And so thinking about getting back into the workspace, and Camille talking about kind of her warm hellos in the morning, and it's got me thinking as we're discussing as an office about how are we going to approach coming back to the workplace. What does a warm welcome look like, right? I think that so much of this last year has been cold and masked and sanitized and feeling not like our welcome selves and not making necessarily others feel like, hey, I want to get close to that person, right? That's been the antithesis of COVID. And so I haven't quite figured out exactly what we're going to do, but as our team starts to think about our return to campus work, and what that means. I've been thinking and starting to integrate those kinds of questions and reflection about what does that warm, welcoming environment look like in a way that still makes people feel valued and safe, right? So we know we have staff of all differing levels of feeling safe, but still wanting to build that rapport with people and that trust and those relationships with folks, and figuring out how exactly we can do that. I wish I had all the answers. If someone has all the answers, man, throw them into the Q&A because I would just so appreciate that. But I don't have all the answers, but I think even just thinking about that probably makes me a little bit more of an aware supervisor and an aware leader.
Thank you so much, Julia. Camille, what about for you? Are there things that you've been thinking about based on our conversations together?
I think I've appreciated just kind of hearing about what other institutions are doing to keep connected, even though we're kind of coming back. Some people are, some people aren't. So I know Julia had some good ideas in our handout that she talked about of how they still stayed connected in the pandemic times. And I know in our office we've done some things too, and Michael talked about the Qualtrics survey, but just finding different ways to connect, kind of just as Julia was talking about, and helping people feel comfortable. I'm trying to think of anything else. Nothing else coming top of mind. What about you, Michael?
Well, I've been thinking about the motivated skills that you all are thinking about and how I'm going to leverage these types of ideas when we've come back. We've all gained new skills because we've been working remotely. We haven't been able to rely on each other as much. And so thinking about how I might leverage and maximize the skills that people have built. They've learned new things about themselves and about the way that they want to work, and making sure that I'm elevating those conversations, that I'm the one as a leader that's bringing it up, and also that I'm creating spaces where people feel comfortable that they can showcase and talk about a skill that they have or a new project that they want to start, that I'm creating spaces for people to deploy that as well. And you all inspired me.
Can I kind of go off of that, Michael, with something else that I had in the hand, or that I tried from an article that Michael sent to us in preparation for this presentation. It was by Jenny Bloom, of course, but about appreciative administration, and the references on our reference on the slides here. But if you're not sure really what your skills are, or maybe what you think your supervisor thinks your skills and strengths are, there are 3 questions that she suggested asking some colleagues. And let me see if I can find those quickly here. It's, when have you seen me seen me at my best as an administrator? What do you appreciate most about my approach to administration and leadership? What is the greatest strength I bring to the team as an administrator? So just 4 questions there, I think it was. And I decided to do that after reading it. I was like, hey, why not? Why don't I just send it out? So I sent it out to my supervisor. I sent it out to a couple colleagues and someone that I supervised, just because I was kind of wanting that 360 evaluation, so to speak. And I also did it for them. When I asked them to do it, I said, but here's how I would answer the questions for you. And that was just really insightful as a discover activity for yourself, I think, to recognize your own strengths, because I know there's so many times where it's hard for us to actually recognize what we are good at, because most of us are good at, you know, recognizing our weaknesses, but not our strengths. And I think that was just a fun activity for me. It was nice to get some of that feedback, and I know that the people I sent it to, you know, said they appreciated that as well, that kind of feedback for me. So I think that was a fun activity that I would suggest as maybe another Discover. But I'm just thinking of working with Michael and Julia, that appreciative mindset came to mind, just how caring they are. So I appreciate them and their examples of modeling this appreciative framework and mindset.
Yay, thank you, Camille. Well, we want to thank everyone for coming. We would love to connect with anyone about these topics or to share ideas. And I'm just going to ask Kara and Wade if you have anything that you want to say before we head out at 2 o'clock.
I just wanted to thank the three of you for being willing to participate in our virtual conference for Utah Advising Association. If we were all together, I'd give you a huge round of applause, and I'm sure everybody else would as well. But thank you so much for bringing this this presentation to the forefront of our minds today. I know I definitely have so many different ideas I want to be working with now because of this. So thank you, everybody. Thank you for joining us today. Our next sessions will be next week on next Thursday. The links will be sent out that same week, so look for those in your emails, and we hope to see you there. Bye, everyone.
Thank you, everyone.
Thank you.